Welcome back. Our next JavaScript component is the modal. So a modal is basically a dialog or a pop-up for notifications, or I don't know, just to annoy your users. I'm usually not a fan of them unless you're building some sort of web app where it really makes sense. Like if users are editing a lot of content and saving things, and you really need to have some sort of alert. Otherwise, it's kind of obnoxious if you have a lot of this on your website. I hate it when I go to a new website and this thing pops up like this and it's all grayed out in the background and it asks me for my email and then you have to X out of it. It's just obnoxious. So there's different options. We can make one that's sort of standard like this. You can make one that's longer and you scroll through the content. You can make a vertically centered one that goes in the middle of the page. You can add tooltips, and I'm not going to go over all of this, and popovers inside of them. You can use the grid system inside of them. But I'm just going to focus on the basics, because if you need to make a more complicated modal, basically you just take the components we've already learned and just put them in there. I mean, if you can put a button in there, if you can put text and a heading in there, it's not really any different if you're adding a popover or a tooltip. Okay, so let's talk about how it works. We have a trigger, and then we have the actual modal itself. And we'll start, let's not define the trigger just yet, because that's the easy part. So I'll add this here, a comment, and then we'll add the window down here. So what we do is make a div with the class of modal, AL, not model. And it's nice to give it the class of fade, which is just to help it animate. And then they do this where they give a tab index of -1. If you're not familiar with tab index, it controls how users can navigate with tab. Like as I hit tab on this website, you can see things are moving around. If you have content that is hidden, like this modal is going to be hidden at the beginning, we don't want people to be able to tab to it. So if you set it to -1, that's sort of the standard for off-screen content. So we'll do that now. Tab index equals -1. If I can type -1. Okay. Next thing that is good to do is set role to dialog, and that's for accessibility. So people know what's going on, what this is. I'll skip the label for now. Now what we do is inside of the modal div, we do a modal dialog, like that. And then inside of it, we put modal content. Now I can never, first of all, I don't use very many modals, but also when I do, I can never remember the syntax for the life of me. So I just come here and pick it apart and take the pieces I need, copy and paste things. I think that's pretty standard, honestly, for these more, well, they're not obscure, but these less commonly used things. So modal header goes inside of the content, and then we also can have a modal body. So in the header, it depends on what we want to put in there. They do an H5, so I will copy that. And we'll do modal title and just say, this is my first modal, and save. Now, it's a really good practice to they actually request that you do this somewhere on here, that you put the little X button to close out. We ask that you include modal headers with dismiss actions whenever possible, or at least provide another explicit dismiss action. So I'm going to just make ours the X for now, which we've already seen how to do with alerts. So basically, I'm just going to copy this in to make this simple. So inside of our header, we'll paste that in. What's important, though, is that we tell it what to dismiss. So we set data dismiss to modal. Okay, and just like on the alert, we can set aria hidden to true so that people with screen readers don't have to encounter this nasty, entity, HTML entity code. All right, so in the modal body, we can put whatever we want. Let's put just some lorem ipsum. We might want to format it later, but let's do a lot of lorem ipsum, maybe 20. Okay. And then in the footer, we can put buttons. You can put the buttons wherever you want, but that's a standard place. So .modal footer. And then in there, we'll do 2 buttons with BTN. Let's do, secondary and then success. And this one I'll say is close or cancel or something. And to make it actually work, we can set data dismiss to be modal again. And then we can do another one, which won't actually do anything, another button. And this one can be success. And we'll just set it to, I don't know, OK or save or something. Now for the trigger. So we have this modal set up. We now need to make our trigger, which usually is a button, and we'll give it a class. Let's do btn info. I'll say launch modal. And then what we need to do is a data toggle, which we should be comfortable with by now. And we set that to modal. Then we need to tell it what is the modal itself that we are targeting. So we didn't give our modal an ID yet, so let's do that. Just call it my modal. And then we set data-target to be my modal. And if all goes well, there we go. We have our first modal. So let's see if the dismiss works. It does. And so does close. Cool. And it is responsive. We resize the page. It looks good. We can even have it on small screen sizes. It's a horrible experience to get modals on mobile, but it does work. All right. So I'm not going to waste your time going over a bunch of other variations, but you can put whatever content you want inside of there. If you want to make a vertically centered one, you can use this class, modal dialog centered. So after modal dialog right here, we put that in there. Now if we try it again, you can see it is centered on our page. And I think it looks pretty good. I mean, if you want, you can put whatever content you want inside of that. We've already seen tooltips and popovers, but you can also, if you want to use the grid system inside a modal body, you can use container fluid, and you put that in there, and then you just have your regular rows and columns and whatever you want. And that's pretty much it. Feel free to peruse the docs and see what else you find, but it's relatively simple once you make the modal. You customize it however you want. Put whatever buttons you want in there, whatever text, just make sure you have a way of dismissing it. Okay, that's modals.